the sort witnessed in the last 8 years, and that they are willing to take decisive action at critical moments when it matters most. These 8 years have witnessed some of the darkest periods of our governance. The crisis our beloved country has been through these last several years have left a scar on our national psyche, which may take some time to erase. This mandate also serves as a constant reminder of what fate awaits us if we fail to meet the aspirations of our people and govern with arrogance. My brothers and sisters, there is much to do to salvage our country and reset it. It would have to start with a reset of the relationship between citizens and elected officials. We must never forget that the people of Ghana have chosen us to represent their wishes and their best interests. It is the reason we would be initiating important governance reforms and sometimes initiate severe measures in the next 4 years to reset our nation and bring it back on track as the Black Star of Africa. The journey is not going to be easy, my brothers and sisters, because the outgoing government has plunged our dear nation into an abyss. However, we are determined to work together with you to build the Ghana we want. And I am certain that we shall win the battle. We intend to work together to restore the shattered confidence in our politics and governance system. This election and its outcome represents an opportunity for a new beginning as we can begin to write a new chapter of our collective story. We need to consciously set the tone for the new direction in which we will be traveling. My brothers and sisters, I want those words, my brothers and sisters, to be a reminder to all of you, a reminder to me, and to every individual who has just been elected or re-elected, that no matter what office you hold, no matter what your political affiliation is or has been in the past, the one thing we share in common is the nation Ghana. And it is that we want a much better Ghana. We want a Ghana that works for everybody and not just a few people. We want a Ghana that considers the well-being of all her citizens and affords them each the ability to live a life of dignity, a life of limitless opportunity. My brothers and sisters, from the Kaya Yo to the managing director, to the market women, the bankers, the teachers, security personnel, nurses, doctors, the pastors, the drivers, the tailors and seamstresses, we are all essential to the functioning and forward motion of this country. We, the people of this soil, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, are in fact our nation's greatest resource. This country, this land, is not for one person, or for one family, or for one tribe or ethnic group. This country, this beautiful, resilient, and resource-rich country that we so love, Ghana, is for all of us. This is our home, but it is not enough to just be born here and to die here. We must also be able to live here with satisfaction. We must be able to love, to dream, to laugh, to eat and dance and drum and share all aspects of our culture that was handed to us by our ancestors. And to do that, we must create sustainable and well-paying jobs through the 24-hour economy initiative. Our most basic needs must be met. Affordable housing and health care, food and clean water, safe work and fair wages. My brothers and sisters, it is with tremendous humility that I accept this clear mandate that you, the good people of Ghana, have given me to lead this great nation as your next president. Every vote that was cast in this election carried the same weight. Every vote also carried a hope in the future of our country. I promise you that I will assemble and lead a government that will carry the weight of those hopes and dreams, whether you voted for me or not, because every victory is a victory for the people, all of the people. Each time we have free and fair elections and then conduct a smooth transfer of power, it reaffirms that our history of leadership and trailblazing was not an aberration. It is not by accident that we were the first nation in Black Africa to win our independence from colonial rule. It is not by accident that the first black person to serve as UN Secretary General, the late Kofi Annan, was a Ghanaian. It is not by accident that so many Ghanaians out there in the world are blazing new trails and being recognized as leaders in their industry. Despite being a relatively small nation, Ghana has been and will continue to be a mighty force on the world stage. We're a proud people and have every reason to be. When Ghana rises, we all stand tall with her, and Africa rises with us too. Last but certainly not the least, I'd like to thank you, the good people of Ghana, for this opportunity once more. I know that many of you are feeling frustrated and angry, but I ask you today, please do not give in to negativity and pessimism. There have been reports of acts of vandalism at some government facilities and installations. I urge you not to vent your frustration in criminal enterprise. We must channel our anger and frustration into the positive enterprise of resetting and rebuilding our nation. Let us be brief in our celebration, for the weight of office will be an onerous one. Expectations of Ghanaians are very high, and we cannot afford to fail them. Let us maintain and even magnify this joy and positivity that we feel. We have arrived at this moment because so many of you believed that change was possible. And now we know that not only is change possible, but it is also already in process. Let us continue to believe that we are already moving towards the Ghana we want, the Ghana of our hopes and dreams. And in this Ghana where we have turned a new chapter and are setting a new tone, our best days are not behind us. My brothers and sisters, our best days are ahead of us. Forward ever, backwards never. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless our homeland, Ghana. Thank you very much. God bless all of you.
Give it up, give it up, give it up to His Excellency. One love, one love, one love.
Republic of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, and that place is full, almost full actually.
It is choked.
This
is a proper choke moment in cantonments, clearly. And this is where the party begins.
Absolutely, absolutely, you know, and I'm happy that, you know, the former president, I'm sorry, Ghanaians.
But his former president,
well,
anyways.
and now president-elect
exactly.
of the Republic of Ghana.
Yes.
Well, tell his people to be measured in their celebration.
Exactly.
You know?
And he says the fact that they're celebrating does not mean that they should engage in criminal enterprises. And that's very instructive, because what we've seen today is something that is very horrible. Attack on government institutions, including the National Disaster Management Organization, people burning down EC offices, among others. It is totally horrible. And so I'm glad that John Dramani Mahama has called the youth who are celebrating to order, and I really feel that that should be able to send the message to the people, because now it's not coming from any party person, it's not coming from party chairman or whatever, it's coming from the man whose victory you are celebrating, the man whose victory is giving you the impetus to go into these state institutions, demanding that the staff walk out and all of those things. And so I'm happy that John Mahama has finally put some word in there to deter them from that. He says, well, the president has also called him
to congratulate him.
And
he also has invited him on Wednesday, which is December 11,
yes,
so that they can initiate the transition process. There's absolutely no time to waste at all. The president elect also said that the country is not for one person or for one family. There are many things that the president-elect actually said that, you know, Bernice Abubeidu Lansa and Ibrahim Al-Hassan, beautiful lady, intelligent man, and Nadede will be taking over.
Emmanuel Ejabing.
Emmanuel Ejabing will be taking over.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Ejabing, you know, helped us when we started the coverage with all the numbers, and Edem Kojo.
And someone texted me about Emmanuel Ejabing. He says the guy is fantastic. I said, oh yeah, that's our accountant's institute.
Yeah. Thank you so far for staying with us. We are absolutely grateful, and we're handing you over to very capable, in fact, more than capable hands.
Yes.
And I'm sure that you have a very good time, you know, listening to Bernice, Ibrahim, and Emmanuel. I am Sewami here, and I've been here with
Joshua Kojo Mensah.
Why do you always do that to your name?
But that's my name. My name is Joshua. Joshua Kojo Mensah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for staying with us. That's not the end of our coverage.
Keep the visuals on.
Yeah, keep the visuals on.
Yes.
As Bernice Abubeidu Lansa and Ibrahim Al-Hassan take over from us. 13 hours, Ghana stands on the edge of a defining moment.
Thank you so much for staying here on your election hub.
Nothing says you want to talk about it.
Where are you now?
I'm running for president again because our country is in crisis. The nation that I handed over to the last Akufo-Addo administration have not been able to move the country up to the next level.
I'm a man of data. I speak only with data. When I say we have done better, I have the data to support it. And this is why the former president doesn't want to debate me. We are winning this election. We are winning this election. Make no mistake about it.
Say a campaign equal. Every say, who say, sa campaign over Lusupoto.
Maman de camper, attention, attention, attention.
When you come for a debate, you cannot come and say yes and go away. I'll pin you down with the facts and data. I'll pin you down with the facts and data. I will pin you down.
If you are a Muslim and you take your pen and you go and vote, instead for Samuel which you have got and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, you make a mistake and you vote for NDC. It is haram.
I want a big gap. I want a big gap. I want all of you to come out. I want a big gap. We want to beat them well.
I am a down. Oh, I am a down.
So I have come to seek for prayers from your heart.
Philadelphia. That's where you home.
To seek for prayers.
Ufa wakata di enoso enkata meso.
Ezu, Eza, Ezu, Eza, Ezu, Eza.
Mumfestiano emami. Mumemistiano. Naminchikano, Enko baby, I see a call. General
has made a choice. The Electoral Commission has declared John Dramani Mahama as president-elect of the Republic. History has been made. A former one-term president has been re-elected, and for the first time ever, Ghana has a female vice president. Now, even before he's sworn in, the expectations are high, over the roof actually. The stakes are also very, very high. The president-elect John Dramani Mahama has been addressing the nation and will be delving into what he's been saying exactly. Thank you for staying here on your election hub. I am Bernice Abubaidulans, and I'm here with my colleague, head of our political desk, Ibrahim Al-Hassan. IB, finally, the climax.
Most definitely.
What we've been waiting for.
Yes, it's been a long, winding, if I can say, torturous, for us, of course, a few days. But of course, it's for the love of God and country. And finally, the EC had given us an indication or a promise, if you will, that the declaration will be done in 72 hours. We're all looking forward to that. But guess what? The EC surprised us. It actually gave us the results ahead of the 72 hours. 72 hours will have been tomorrow. So kudos to the EC. It has indeed helped us reduce the stress.
Right.
And then I'm sure Ghanaians who were very anxious, right, and waiting for the final declaration, especially given some pockets of parliamentary issues, attempts to recollate some results at the regional coalition centers, got many supporters, especially of the opposition NDC, apprehensive. And you saw some of them mass up at these regional coalition centers. So it was right in order that finally the presidential declaration has been done. The outstanding parliamentary issues will be resolved as the days go by. And so, but it's kudos to the EC, finally.
Right. There's a lot to break down, and so we'll take it one step at a time. Let's talk about the EC chairperson, and she interacted with some reps from the media.
Yes.
She was asked about the waiting time, and she made a statement which suggests that she wanted to be careful.
Yes.
She would rather be accurate than fall under pressure
Yes.
to present figures that may turn out not to be so. She actually talks about the method, the system
Yes.
which the EC had put together in transmitting the results from the regional levels.
Yes.
We've spoken about that over time, but she talks about the fax machines. Some have said it's outmoded. In this day and age, there are faster ways to do this than the fax machine. But for her, she will take her time to get it right.
Yes. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Dr. Afarijan's EC deployed these same fax machines, right? And so I'm sure Jen Mensah will say that I might want to change a number of things under my stewardship as chairperson for the Electoral Commission. But maybe the fax machines are not one of those things that I want to change. I'm not sure the delay or otherwise has got anything to do with the fax machines.
Right.
The EC has decided to introduce another layer, and that's the regional collation. Now, even that, it works two ways. The original process was that the results were transmitted to the national headquarters from the constituency level, which meant that at the national strong room or the collation center, the EC could have had to put together 276 constituency results. That will take much more time. That will be quite tedious. Now, with the decentralization that has just taken place with regional collation, the tedious work will be done at the regional level. And we saw that happen, that at every point in time, when the regional results are transmitted, the EC just has to undertake simple calculation, and that's addition, at the national headquarters, and that speeds up the process. Others had argued that no, it is the original collation that has introduced the tension in the process. And so if everybody is aware that results are declared at the collation centers within the constituencies, and those results are transmitted to the national level, they are rest assured that there is no second layer which will then open these results up to manipulation, as we are witnessing. Had it not been that we still have regional collation centers, there wouldn't have been NDC supporters massing up today at the Greater Accra Regional Coalition Center over the Okanakwe Central resorts and then also the Okanakwe North resorts. We told that some of them have had to be put on hold. Some of them will be dealt with in the coming days. In Sawan Drejeri, among others. Of course, 9 of them to be specific. So, Venice, indeed, I agree with the chairperson of the Electoral Commission that accuracy over speed. But if the process delays too much, we witness what we witness, where we are counting about 5 or 6 individuals who have lost their lives as a result of this year's elections. And that was what we were all trying to avoid. Delay brings anxiety, suspicions, and then it gets many people being apprehensive and being agitated. So, yes, we implore the EC to find a fine balance between
speed and accuracy.
And then speed. It's very important.
Now, talking about massing up of party supporters at the various offices of the EC in the regions and even sometimes at the constituency level, let's look at John Dramani Mahama's acceptance speech. I thought he would have spent a little more time to address that, because we heard from the NPP's youth organizer who had alleged that some NDC supporters were causing some mayhem in different parts of the country. And so you would have expected that he did mention, though, that there's no need to foment trouble, there's no need for violence. He actually cautioned that they should jubilate in moderation. That was very instructive for me. But we're looking at a leader of a party, and we're looking at all the concerns that have been raised. Do you think there was no need for him to go too much into that, because the EC's declaration will maybe stem the tide? Well, so what the NDC supporters did, and Benis, I'm not sure it's just an allegation from Salah Mustafa of the NPP, the National Youth Organizer of the NPP. No, we all saw, and we actually brought this to the attention of Ghanaians when Hanan, our own reporter in Tamale, reported live NDC supporters breaking into the regional warehouse. These are people perceived to be NDC supporters. It's an interesting dynamic. In some instances, of course, some feel related to that. That they suspect that some NADMO offices that were stormed and with some items made away, that was done by NPP supporters. We get that. Here, I'm talking about supporters of the NDC that we spoke to live, who indicated that they had suffered for too long, and that's how come they stormed the warehouse and made away with the rice. You heard Sami Jamfi talk about the fact that the party has won power. If it's rice that its supporters want, they should just place a call to them and they will provide them with the rice. They should not be breaking into warehouses and state installations and be looting. And so Sami Jamfi had condemned the act in no uncertain terms. So I understand why John Dramani Mahama will equally caution the party supporters without dwelling so much on it. But of course, the caution has been sent out there, but they are engaged in criminal activities. Looting is criminal. Breaking into state installations is criminal. And the fact that your party has won power doesn't offer you immunity against some of these activities. Somebody will argue that it's not the first time. Yes, but it must stop at a point and it must stop somewhere. There's no point to equalize here. Wrong is wrong. That's the point. Doesn't matter if so he touched on it. And I hope, we all hope and pray that the caution has gone down well with the NDC supporters. If they start, and even if it's true that others are joining, once you start, you open the door for others to join. And even criminal elements to take advantage of the situation. And so you're not too sure, where some people say, well, getting an NDC shirt or an MPP shirt is easy. People, they were thrown in the streets, literally. So you cannot, unless you're able to pinpoint person A and say, I know him to be a member or an executive of the party. But doesn't it all come down then to the police? Yes, it does. And here we want to celebrate not just the police, but also the military. They exercise a lot of emotional intelligence, Venice. They could have
easily gotten this escalated, and we will not be talking about 4-5 people who have lost their lives to this exercise of choosing a president, a vice president, and members of parliament. They sometimes took the backstage and allowed them, because what was it that they were going for? Rice. We've seen videos of air conditioners being carried away, refrigerators being carried away. That is nothing compared to human life. So, to be honest with you, I think the decision by the police, the military, not to engage these irate youth and individuals is something that is commendable. Now, the party's hierarchy, the president-elect, has had the opportunity to engage the supporters directly and ask them to exercise restraint and stay away from these criminal activities. It's good. And so, yes, I've heard the argument that why was the police standing by? The police should have been proactive. The police should have engaged them. Engage them in what way? Verbal engagement or use force? That could have easily degenerated to something else. So, kudos to the police. Personally, I think those rioters were handled better. It could have been worse.
Right, it could have been worse. Now, let's go to President John Dramani Mahama, President-elect John Dramani Mahama's speech. And he talks about what this mandate means for him and the party.
Yes.
He talks about what it means if they fail.
Yes.
He talks about why they must remain sober.
Yes.
Even in jubilation. What do you think this waiting period, and the waiting period is between when he lost in 2016 up until now that he's been re-elected, what do you think that period has done to him?
Well, personal reset, as he's seeking to reset the country. I'm sure he's had the opportunity to reset himself personally, and he has said this on in no uncertain terms, right? That lessons have been learnt. Whenever a party is in power and that party is voted out, that party is voted out for some stated reasons. And once the party does an introspection, the party then realizes that these were the shortfalls, these were the areas we went wrong, these were the policies we got wrong. If I'm to be given another opportunity, I will right the wrongs. And on his campaign platforms, that is exactly what he had been stating. And I'm talking about the 2020 campaign and then the 2024 campaign. Again, what this reset, as I christened it, has afforded him to do is to, for instance, to rethink the structure and even the size of government. If there is anything that Akufo-Addo got the flag for, it's because of the quantum of his appointees for the first term. Even when he decided to cut it down, we're still hovering around over 80. Then John Dramani Mahama says, Ghanaians were complaining about that. I've been in power. I've realized that I could govern with 60 ministers. And then he puts that in his manifesto, that he will govern with 60 ministers. And Benis, I tell you that it's not every NDC member who is happy with that promise. Because that promise means that there are many NDC members, NDC campaign financiers, NDC sympathizers who will lose out on an opportunity to be appointed as either as a minister or as a deputy minister. So privately, when you engage some of them, they tell you that that was a needless promise. But no, that was what Ghanaians wanted. A population of just over 30 million. And we are appointing over 125 ministers to do exactly what many analysts are asking and many Ghanaians are asking. Especially
when you have directors at various departments, various agencies, various ministries. Yes. You have MCEs, you have DCEs. Yes. We have such a decentralized system that sometimes you wonder whether even ministers are really needed. Yes, you add that to regional ministers as well, right? And then you go down to DCEs as well. And so, yes, indeed, this country can be governed by just 60 ministers. Now, what the reset, the personal reset I talk about also means is that
the NDC is expected to do much better than it did when it got the opportunity to govern.
I'll come back to you shortly, Ibrahim. We've been hearing from President-elect John Dramani Mahama. It's now time to hear from President Akufo-Addo. Now, President Akufo-Addo expressed his commitment to ensuring a seamless transfer of power on 7th January 2025 and looked forward to working with the president-elect and his team to realize this goal. The president also congratulates the Electoral Commission and the Ghanaian people for a successful election that reflects the enduring strength of Ghana's democracy. He acknowledges the commitment and participation of all stakeholders, which have ensured that the democratic process in Ghana remains credible and peaceful. In the spirit of collaboration, the president has invited the president-elect for a meeting on Wednesday, 11 December 2024 at Jubilee House to initiate the transition process. He remains committed to the principles of good governance and a peaceful transition that will further strengthen Ghana's reputation as a beacon of democracy in Africa. It's signed by GHOne, Director of Communications, Office of the President.
Yes, so before the presidency released this statement, John Dramani Mahama in his address had mentioned that the president, the outgoing president, has placed a call to congratulate him for his victory. And of course, the adjectives for the NDC victory are many. The outgoing president, and for that matter, President Akufo-Addo, at the statement you just read, talks about the fact that the victory is a decisive one. Yes, indeed, the former president in his address, or the president-elect in his address, also recognizes that this victory is like nothing that has ever been recorded before, and it's for a reason. The resoundingness of the victory means that the expectations are equally very, very high, and he's not lost sight of that fact. He also singled out Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the vanquished, the NPP flag bearer, for praise, that his decision to concede at the time he conceded did a lot to douse the flame, and then also to at least get many people to pull brakes on many of the things they had wanted to do because of the suspicion in the system, and the suspicion especially against the EC. And we'll spend time, I'm sure, to talk about the suspicions, the lack of confidence and lack of trust in the EC, and how that can be cured. First of all, how we got here and how that can be cured moving forward, because it's something that ought to be cured.
For some, it comes down to the Constitution. For some, everything we want, the change we want, the change we are expecting, comes down to the Constitution. So talk about the appointment of EC chairpersons. Yes. And we've seen what happened even when the NPP took over power in 2016. Yes. And some have suggested we are likely to see same in 2025. I will be surprised if Madam Jean Mensah is allowed to continue because of the kind of feedback the NDC has given in opposition, the kind of concerns and criticisms that they had of her personally and the conduct of the EC as a whole. And so it will take a lot more than talking, a lot more than promising. And again, back to former President Mahama, President-elect speech. He does talk about a lot of things, including how this is an emphatic win for them, and how the numbers translate into a constant reminder of what awaits them if they fail to deliver on the promises they've made to the people. And he includes if they choose to serve in arrogance. We know how the outgoing government has been accused, especially of not being a listening government. Talk about Ken Ofori-Atta being asked to leave by even members of the governing NPP in Parliament, concerns by Ghanaians wanting the finance minister to go, and a couple others. We won't leave here if we keep mentioning all of them, but it's instructive that the president-elect recognizes that. But again, would he live by his words? It's early days yet. But again, will he live by these words?
To frame the question differently, I'll put it this way. Will his people live by his words? Because usually it is the appointees that reinforce that arrogance tag. Then I understand why the former president and the president-elect will include this in his speech, because we've been doing a post-mortem of the defeat of flag bearer Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and then MPP as a party, the heaviest in our history. And here we will even go beyond the fourth Republican dispensation. That's the first time any party has lost this number of seats in Parliament. That's the first time any political party has gained this number of seats, absolute majority.
9 outstanding, though. We are yet to know what happens. Will that make a difference either way?
That will never make any difference, regardless of, even if NDC gets 170 seats. It's unprecedented. It's never happened before. And I report directly from Parliament, and I've been doing that for ages. Now, you understand the dynamics in Parliament, that if you have a majority of, say, 20, that's even considered a comfortable majority for you to transact your business. In the 7th Parliament, the NPP had a majority of over 40. And so that Parliament didn't need the minority for anything. Yes, the minority will make the noise, but the majority always had their way. As they say, the minority will have its say, the majority will have its way. Now, as we speak, if care is not taken, even the say, the minority cannot have in the 9th Parliament.
But then also, that creates a problem, doesn't it?
Exactly.
We have spoken over time about how the political structure in this country sometimes allows for a rubber stamp parliament.
Yes.
Now, you're looking at this situation, you say the 9 outstanding will make no difference. So this then puts a lot of pressure on us, the media, because then the scrutiny of parliament will need to be taken to a different level.
I agree perfectly. But I think if we are to go back to the statement or the speech of the president-elect John Dramani Mahama, we realize that was exactly the message he was sending to the rank and file of his party and his appointees, which I'm sure by now he's well aware as to who is going where. What is left is just tie the loose ends, engage in consultations, so that when he announces, we will not have agitations across the country. It's happened before, right? So the message is this: we have a task to undertake. That task will require that we do right by Ghanaians.
Right.
It means we not sending terrible contracts to Parliament for approval because we know we have overwhelming numbers, right?
Yes.
It means we not contracting loans with terrible conditions, knowing very well that we have overwhelming number of MPs who will just say, yeah. And it's also incumbent on the MPs themselves to be able to say that per a certain judgment from the Supreme Court, they have been given the impetus to be independent thinkers, because the party cannot take over their status, or cannot, by a dint of the fact that they've disagreed with the party's position, or they've decided to think independently. The party will then say that you have been expelled from the party, and as a result you are losing your seat. Per the judgment from the Supreme Court on the vacant seat, regardless of what your party does to you, that 4-year mandate that you've been given to serve as an MP, you have to see through, or see that 4-year mandate through, right? So I also think that we'll have many NDC MPs in the 9th Parliament who will be independent thinkers, who call a spade, who say it as it is, who will compel the government to probably withdraw some agreement, work on them, fine-tune them to the satisfaction of their constituents before they then give it their blessing. And it's happened before. Ekos Bulgabra, when at the point he was appointed to serve as a minister, we were told he had issues with his citizenship. He was holding dual allegiance. Now, what happened in a one-sided parliament, one-sided NDC parliament, that's from 1993 to 1996, the NPP decided to boycott parliament because per the constitution then, or per the arrangement then, we were to hold the presidential elections after which we follow up with the parliamentary. After the presidential elections, the NDC candidate won. And so many people in the country, expecting development to flow from government directly, decided to vote for the NDC MPs overwhelmingly. And then the NPP decided to boycott Parliament and then write a stolen verdict as a way of registering their displeasure. Now, that meant that for that Parliament, it was just a one-sided Parliament. If you delve into the history of the fourth Republican Parliament, you will be told that that Parliament did an extraordinary work, even though there was no opposition in that Parliament. I expect that to also take place in this ninth Parliament that we are going into. If it's bad, regardless of where it's coming from. The NPP MPs decided to do a similar exercise on Ken Ofori-Atta as related to earlier. Unfortunately, the president did not listen to them. And the remnant of that is what the party is reaping today by way of this overwhelming defeat. So I'm sure if lessons are learned, then John Dramani Mahama and his government will also learn lessons and allow dissenting voices to speak. We have as many as 6 independent MPs as well who are going to the 9th Parliament.
I was going into that because we need to look at Parliament as well when we're done with the presidential analysis and all, because interesting dynamics at play. Very, very interesting. We've spoken to Kwame A+, who's told us that it's early days yet. He hasn't made a decision on which side has his allegiance. But this is unprecedented, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's unprecedented. Maximum you talk about 2, 3 thereabout, but for 6 to go independent and then win, it's befuddling. But of course, everything about 2024 elections is befuddling. Everything about election 2024 is shocking. The NDC is claiming that per the certified results announced by the EC, it has 8 seats in Ashanti region. And let that sink in. 8 from 4. The NDC at the point was even struggling to win 3 seats in Ashanti region. Fortunately for the NDC, it got 4. In my engagement with Mutaka Mubarak, he had mentioned that they were eyeing 5 more. Now, if their claim is anything to go by, then they are fighting for 10 seats in the Ashanti region out of 47. So everything about this election is unprecedented. Everything about this election is shocking. Kwame A+, he was known for composing music with political messages, right? And poking fun at losing parties. So, for instance, this year we'll have expected a banger from Kwame A+ to poke fun at the outgoing administration and the NPP. But guess what he's doing? He's readying his boots to go to Parliament. That's how surprising it is. There were many seats that were lost by the NDC. The party has mounted a great fight and recovered many of those seats, to the extent that even the seat at the backyard of the flag bearer of the NPP, Wale Wale, was up for contest. That tells you how different the dynamics for the 2024 elections have been. And for years to come, political watchers will look back and ask questions and probe further. And so, yes, Bernice, this election is like none other. The surprises are there, but it means an overwhelming mandate. A bigger mandate, as I mentioned, means a bigger expectation. The NDC has just about 2 years to give this country a sense of direction. And if it fails to grab the opportunity within these 2 years, there will be disenchantment. What I've observed as a political watcher is that when MPP wins and comes to power, the goodwill lasts longer than NDC. And I'm sure the NDC is even aware that whenever it comes to power, the demand on it to fulfill its promises are sharper, stronger, and vociferous within the shortest possible time than the NPP. Even before the 2020 election, the goodwill that President Akufo-Addo had was still visible. No NDC president will be given that leverage, and the NDC is aware.
Could it also be that the Ghanaian voter is becoming more and more aware, more and more discerning. We need to give credit to the voters as well. We've seen people come out to protest. For example, look at the Say No to Galamsey protests, and these were very young Ghanaians, and some of them old Ghanaians who came out to say, look, we have a voice. We are your employers.
That's true.
And so when something is going wrong, we have a right to come out and tell you we aren't happy.
Yes.
This could also be that the Ghanaian voter is changing. The rules of the game are changing, and so you cannot play according to the rules of previous years.
Absolutely, and you've hit the nail right on the head. The Ghanaian voter is becoming much more discerning, that's true. But guess what they do? They usually don't talk. I'm sure any political watcher who had not gone to the grounds and engaged the people directly, or any political watcher who is not like you and I, who are in the media and we know the sentiment of the people, at the point felt that this election was going to be close. Trust me, if you just monitored the media landscape and what the political parties had beamed to you in your home via television and the power of the media, you would have felt, and I heard many people say that this election is too close to call, this election is too close to call. Immediately I hear you say that, I know that you've not been to the ground. You've not gauged the pulse of the people. There are many Ghanaians voters who will not say a word. They are waiting to go into that booth to register their displeasure. And that's what we saw happen on January 7th.
And let me mention that Emmanuel Ejabing, one of our guys with the figures, will be joining us shortly, because I would like for him to do one thing, to look at the turnout in Ashanti.
Yes.
And let's say out of the people who didn't show up to vote, if we even had 90% of that number coming to vote for the NPP, would it have changed anything?
Well, so over 6 million Ghanaians did not vote, registered voters, over 6 million.
Right.
In 2020, just a little over 4 million did not vote. The voters register now has over 18 million voter population. It used to hover around 12 million thereabout. In fact, 14 million. Just over around 14 million. Out of the 14 million, the candidate Akufo-Addo had a little over 6 million. John Dramani Mahama had also a little over 6 million, right? So close to 3 million Ghanaians did not vote in 2020. That number has now increased to more than 6 million not voting. Yes, as for apathy, we all knew that there will be apathy. And usually there's apathy when a party is done with its second or the double cycles.
Right.
First term, 4 years, voter turnout is high, there's enthusiasm. There are many people who want to see some of the good things that have happening again, until 2020, when President Akufo-Addo lost ground in the second term. In 2020, President Akufo-Addo actually lost ground. Mahama gained more than 2 million votes. Right, that was an exception. If you go pre-Akufo-Addo, you realize that President Akufo, the votes that brought him to power in the year 2001 went up in 2004. The votes that brought John Evans Atamos to power together with John Mahama in 2009 went up in 2012 with John Dramani Mahama, of course, as the flag bearer. And then in 2016, the votes that brought Akufo-Addo, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, went down. And that was when the NPP started losing ground. Nonetheless, President Akufo-Addo got his second term.
Why?
He got some numbers in parliament, though not favorable. He got an independent MP to caucus with his side, and he got his government in place. Now, when you talk about apathy, it was visible. The Ashanti region, visible. Greater Accra, many supporters did not vote. In fact, if you look at the figures closely, John Dramani Mahama appreciated by a little over 100,000 votes. A little over 100,000 votes.
In the Greater Accra region, or
nationally,
compared to
his 2020 numbers. Because 2020 he did extraordinarily well. No candidate had done that well within a space of 4 years. And so all he needed to do was solidify his grounds and then add on. So he added on 100,000 votes. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia lost 2.5 million votes.
Compared to what candidate Akufo-Addo had in 2020.
Exactly. And that is where the challenge is. And it's across board. It's not just Ashanti region. It's not just Greater Accra. Look at Western region. NDC always struggles to make inroads in Western region. That region is as blue as, is as green as you can imagine now. But it was one of the bluest. In fact, after Ashanti region,
Western
region was and had always been. That has changed. And so, yes, we talk about the wave, but there is always a reason for a wave. And that reason is a verdict on the performance of the administration that's in power. Right? So, there are many firsts. We will, I'm sure, spend some time to talk about how NPP as a party should receive this. We are now talking about how NDC should use this. It's a mandate of an overwhelming endorsement. All the NDC needs to do is to stick to the promises. Stick to the script. You promised 24-hour economy.
Stick to it.
Stick to it. Let factories start working 24/7. Let us see numbers of unemployed youth reduce as a result of the implementation of the 24-hour economy. Right? Say no to impunity. See, I sat on air and wondered why anybody will arrest a group of protesters and keep them in cells for more than 3 weeks, when government, and even if you speak to a level 100 political science student, they will tell you that the protesters are not political party members. They are a group of young people who are disenchanted and have poured out on the street. Any single protester who went out to protest because of how they were treated, I can beat my chest and tell you that if any of them decided to vote, we're obviously not going to vote for the incumbent administration. They were not going to do that. And so I was wondering, who offered such an advice? Because in essence, you were alienating a number of people who could have just vented, gone home, and said, okay, we just vented, nothing happened to us. So we think these people are tolerant. Let's vote for them. Some of them might have voted for you.
Right.
But with the actions taken, they were never going to vote for you. And so if a post-mortem is to be done relative to Greater Accra and how come the NPP performed that abysmally, some of these things will have to be looked at. Look at the stories about selling of state lands. These are stories that if we are unable to address, if indeed it's not true, they are ingrained on the minds of the citizens. No wonder when you speak to people in government, they tell you that for Greater Accra, we know that the propaganda has gained root, so we don't expect to win Greater Accra. But even if we lose marginally and we win Central Region and Ashanti Region shows up, we are in business. Guess what? Central Region didn't show up. In fact, it didn't turn up for the party at all. It rather went to the party of the opposition. Ashanti Region, regardless of the effort, decided to stay home and not vote. For the first time, NDC is recording 33%
in Ashanti
Region. Those were the votes that NDC at a point will be expecting from the Bono Ahafo region, the old Bono Ahafo region, or the Western region, the old Western region. Whenever NDC is to perform abysmally in such regions, those were the percentages that they were recording. They are now recording those percentages in Ashanti region
of the NPP.
And you know what that does to the NDC? It will tell itself that those higher voter turnout were not realistic. Those 85-90% voter turnout were not realistic, and it is because the party was not vigilant. So the level of vigilance of the NDC in the Ashanti region for all the elections to come will be through the roof, and they will seek to confirm their suspicion that those higher voter turnouts were not realistic. who is to blame? It's the NPP that has allowed the NDC to believe that indeed those figures were not realistic. Until the party is able to whip up interest in the region, for the numbers to climb to the 90%, 85%, the NDC will continuously be saying that those numbers were manufactured.
Interesting. This is your election hub here on GHOne and Star FM, I beg your pardon, and other affiliates of GHOne and Star FM. If you just joined us, we've been digesting that acceptance speech by President-elect John Dramani Mahama, and also looking into the figures as announced by the EC chairperson, Jean Mensah. And it's interesting. You've been telling us what has been happening in the Ashanti region, for example. Let's talk about this, the third force, right? And I'm using the third force as the slogan of Cheddar. I'm looking at it as what political analysts have been asking for a very long time, because it appears the country is left with no choice but the NPP or the NDC.
Yes.
Let's look at the performance of the other candidates, some of them independent, others representing political parties.
Yes.
Now, when you look at the figures, the third highest went to Cheddar, 84,478, followed by Mr. Alan Shermatin, 31,202. There are those who are surprised at the performance of Cheddar, but take a look at this. Rejected ballots, 239,109. That is the third force.
Absolutely.
Isn't it surprising?
It's a protest vote.
And I was coming to that because I want to believe that not all these ballot papers were innocently damaged or innocently spoiled, for lack of a better expression. I want to believe that there are some people who went into the booth in anger and decided to just vote in a way that amounts to a rejected ballot.
We saw some images from, I think, Boko during the special voting. You know, the special voting exercise for this phenomenon of people voting and then taking pictures of their thumb-printed ballot papers. And so the one we saw was for the parliamentary, and that individual had voted for all the three on the ballot box, but on the ballot paper, of course, ostensibly to get that ballot paper rejected, right? There were many others who said they were equally going to vote for Ekwe-Adonko, the late Madam Ekwe-Adonko.
Again?
Yes, and they knew that she was not alive, but to them, they would not stay home. They will show up, but they will decide to vote for somebody who is not alive. As bad as it is, that's what some people did. So I understand why the third force will be the rejected ballot. But let's talk about Cheddar, 84,000.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a showing. The last time we had GHOne, that's Christian Andrews, who's a man of God, who leveraged on his following to place third. Cheddar came with some momentum. In fact, I dare say that he has more billboards than Alan Shermatin got by way of vote, the 31,000, right? So his visibility was there. He managed to attract some youth who were willing to publicly state that they were going to vote for him, right? But at the point, I think he also lost momentum. He started very well. Cheddar started very well, to the extent that he was even sending shivers down the spine of the two major parties, because many people were wondering as to whether Cheddar was going to take this process to a runoff. And they harbored those fears, both NDC and NPP. They harbored those fears, to the extent that there were even conspiracies that he might have been disqualified by the EC. He sailed through, but he lost momentum. The reason why in the foreseeable future, Benis, we are not going to get any third force, any formidable third force, we're not going to get it, is that anybody who attempts to join the NDC MPP in the race is doing so to catch the eyes of one of the two parties, to either catch the eyes of the NPP or catch the eyes of the NDC. In the coming days, you will see how these aspirants, these candidates who have lost out, will cozy up to John Dramani Mahama.
No, I mean, to be fair, right?
Yes.
Some of these political parties and independent candidates may have a certain affiliation to either party or party B.
Yes.
But some will suggest or argue that in the spirit of forging ahead, there needs to be some consensus building, right? Won't you give them benefit of doubt that it's not necessarily a selfish interest? Yes, I wanted to be president. I didn't get the opportunity, but I still may have ideas to share, right? I still may have suggestions to make. So won't you give them benefit of doubt that this is not necessarily succumbing to John Dramani Mahama or the NDC because they want, but because they genuinely may want to see the country get better?
I agree. I grant that. But that will also mean that they cannot forge ahead on their own, come together and constitute any force at all. Because if it's about helping in nation building, why not? Nobody's saying don't help in nation building. Offer positive criticism. That's accepted. But if your forging of alliance is to ensure that you are giving one contract or the other, then you are looking out for yourself and not the interest of the country. On paper, we can decide to even form an alliance for them. Guess how much they are going to get? They are going to get less than 2%. And if the resource is projected right now on our screens, you see that when you put all of them together, they are doing less than 2%.
1.84%.
Exactly. So if they decide to come together, in reality, that's how much votes they're still going to get. That's because, like I said, nobody takes them seriously. As sad as it is, that's our reality. I think we should stop dreaming about getting a force that can wrestle power from the NDC and MPP in the foreseeable future. That's not going to happen. Let's talk about Alan Kojo Martin. His supporters are happy. He himself, he's happy. Because he was in the race for one reason. He was not treated fairly. And he felt that he should do everything possible for this government to lose. And this government has lost. And so, if he sits back and reevaluate his aim, his plan, his purpose, I'm not sure Alan Martin will be a sad man this evening. He will not. See, there are many of his supporters who will eventually return to the MPP. In fact, they might have already returned in spirit. They are just waiting for the introspection to be done, for the diagnosis to be done, for MPP to say that this is the new path we are charting, this is the new direction. They will return to the MPP.
Do you see that happening anytime soon?
Yes, that will happen. Just as the NDC decided to constitute a committee to undertake that diagnosis and then come out with a report, the Kosibotwe committee. I envisage the MPP might not set up a committee, but the national leadership will take it up and then diagnose. They can decide to just say that, it is the cancer of 2 terms, right? Incumbency. After 2 terms, you made too many enemies, and that everybody wants to see your back. Or it is the matter of Edidija, right? Edidija simply means that you all came together, right?
To fight for a cause.
And then, when the spoils or the goodies, the proceeds came in, you decided not to share them equally. That got many people disenchanted, and they decided to either sit there and watch you burn, or to assess your enemy to burn you up. That's a reality. That is there. But ask yourself why the party became so unattractive to the floating voters. And it was visible on social media. Very visible on social media, right? Yes, but it might not have been taken seriously because the elections had not been held, and you can still have some hope that regardless of how government is being bashed on social media, the job is on the ground.
There were those who actually said elections aren't won on social media. From today, I'm sure we'll begin to look critically as at social media being a medium where people, even some, hide behind pseudonyms because they fear to come out, they fear to be targeted.
Yes.
I think we should begin to look at social media as a community on its own.
Definitely.
Where people should be taken seriously when they make certain pronouncements and air their views.
Dennis, and they must be tolerant to divergent views. See, you have no idea a response you give to somebody's post on social media. That will cost you a vote. You have no idea how many people will have their opinions shaped on social media against one government or the other. If somebody is venting on social media, you are better off that the person is even venting, right? So that's a sign for you to address something that might have been going wrong, right? Instead of you going there to attack the person and tagging everybody who disagrees with you as the opposition, an element from the opposition party. And this is not limited to the NPP. It's a penchant for the two main political parties. Once you speak and one feels it favors their position, they think you belong to them.
Right.
Once you speak in a way or write in a way or share an opinion in a way and it goes against the interests of one other party, yes, you've been paid to do so. You are running down the government. You are anti-government. I've always maintained that. The very day a media house decides to become a praise singer to the government is that very day that media house has taken its responsibility to the population.
But is that not what we suffer in this country? Unfortunately, some of these politicians would unleash their foot soldiers at you. And you're right. And let me say here to President-elect John Dramani Mahama, GHOne television, the EIB network will hold you to your words.
Definitely.
We promise to do that because we owe it to the Ghanaian people. We owe it to the conscience of the nation. We owe it to everybody who stepped out to make a decision to choose you. So trust me, Mr. President-elect John Dramani Mahama, here at EIB, we will hold you to your words. We will keep the words of this speech dear to our hearts. We will remind you of them every time because that is what we do.
Yes.
We are the media. We don't, we are not praise singers, obviously. And I'm not saying, for example, that if the president delivers on his promise, we will not report on it. We will.
Yes.
But we will not be praise singers.
That's the point. It's not even in anybody's interest for a media house to be a praise singer. If government wants praise singing, it can buy advertising space either in the front page of the Daily Graphic or the center spread. It can pay. And the advert will be published, right? Here, we are to direct you to the things that are going wrong. You get them corrected and you get applauded for it. You get applauded for it. And so any government, every government should be excited that a media house is telling you that you broke down a health facility at Labadi and you had promised to put up a new one. Years down the line, you've not been able to do that.
And you're building hospitals in other places.
We draw your attention to it.
They may not necessarily be needed, but because you want to, show that you're doing something. I mean, sometimes you just cannot understand how these things work. So, I mean, that's just by way of information. So you can just let Mr. President-elect know that
he's watching.
We will be reminding you of this promise, and also to the people around the president, or who will be around the president-elect, because we cannot underrate the influence of the perception people have about who the president or the president-elect will surround himself with.
Exactly.
You spoke about social media, and you spoke about a possible, introspection by members of the NPP and by the party itself to understand what exactly happened. I'm sure they know by now. And I'm saying that because when you get onto social media, right after Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia conceded, there were those who came out full chest to say this and this and this and this is what caused our loss. I've seen MP Vincent Asefwa talk about the sentiments and how they are sorry. I go under the comments of his post and you realize that even people who are the base of the party are upset. But for the loss, they would have kept the information to themselves. But they know what led to the loss.
Yes, they would have kept the information to themselves. But get what else they kept to themselves? Their votes. And that's why we are here, or that's why the party is here. They kept the grief within themselves, but they said that because they were harboring the grief, they were not going to vote, right? And I've heard many through about this message, famous message or infamous, from former President GHOne that it's better to be a messenger in a government or a political party in power than to be a general secretary of a political party in opposition. That message doesn't apply to everybody. It's not everybody who will get to be a messenger for a party in power. There are others who don't get anything at all, right? And it's not just that they don't get anything. Whenever they make attempts to get ahead, they are equally blocked. Such a person will say in a kind language that to wait, if you are gaining and I'm suffering, and there's a way we can be leveled where we will both be losing, then so be it. And it is an inherent principle of a human being, right? You cannot be enjoying alone and I'm suffering, and yet still you want me to help you reinforce your enjoyment. And it's applicable to both political parties. So talking about the lessons that they ought to learn, the MPP especially will have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. See, Electoral Martin might return to the MPP depending on the new direction of the NPP. There are many MPP bigwigs who will tell you that this party today is not the party they knew yesterday.
You're right.
And they don't hide it.
Yes, I remember engaging Nyaho Tamaklo. He actually did tell me that even the person of Akufo-Addo is not what he knows him to be. Exactly. And in fact suggested, even though that's far-fetched, suggested that probably something had been done to him. You know, because this is not the Akufo-Addo he knows. Yeah, that's besides the point.
And that's because the Akufo-Addo that he embarked on the Kumepreko demonstration with was a lesson in Akufo-Addo. Was Akufo-Addo that if Ghanaians say we don't like e-levy, he will say, let me listen to you. I won't give you e-levy. When Ghanaians had said the size of his government was quite too large, he won't say that because the job is arduous and the task is huge and I want to deliver on my promise to you. Give me all the tools in your tools kit, and that's exactly what I need for me to deliver. And yet we realized that eventually we ended up facing many headwinds, many difficulties than we could ever imagine. See, and the President Akufo-Addo story can never be told without mentioning the external factors. Yes, the externalities, yes. And nobody will be oblivious of the fact that there were externalities. But the point is that there has never been a point in our history as a country where everything is rosy. Then why do you think that we will want some special qualities in our leaders? We want some special qualities in our leaders because we know that the road will be bumpy, the road will be rocky, the road will be tough, things will be difficult. We expect those qualities to be exhibited for us to be steered clear of those bad waters, right? And so Togo face headwinds, Cote d'Ivoire face headwinds, Nigeria face headwinds, South Africa face headwinds. But how come that comparatively our situation was far worse than their situation? That's the conversation. The conversation is about the buffers we had, the insulations we had or otherwise. The conversation is about how exposed we were, right? And I'm sure when the new administration comes, there will be externalities. Has Russia stopped fighting in Ukraine? Russia is still fighting in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
Trump has become a president. That's a headwind.
Yes, a serious
That's a serious headwind. That's an external factor that is comparative to COVID-19 as far as Africa is concerned, right? But we will not take that excuse from the new administration. And so that's why you shouldn't have expected us to take that excuse from the outgoing administration.
And in fact, I find it pretty interesting that COVID-19, for example, was used as an excuse so many times, because honestly, we were told, when we were asked to stay at home by President Akufo-Addo, that he knew how to revive a dead economy.
Yeah.
What changed?
Question.
Because I'm sure they knew what the impact of COVID-19 was going to be, either, I mean, on the large scale, the global scale, and also on us staying at home and not working.
Yes.
The economy shut down.
Yes.
But we were told that he knew how to bring back a dead economy, but not how to revive dead human beings. And so we bought into that.
Yes.
So I don't see how COVID now becomes an excuse that is used over and over and over again.
See, let me relate to the outgoing finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. As at the time, many people felt things were going south with our economy. The president was still full of praises for Ken Ofori-Atta at every opportunity he got. There were many who felt there were many other competent hands, like the former New Job in South MP, Dr. Marcus Ibeyebua, who was one time chairman for the Finance Committee in Parliament, and many other people suggesting that, there were others who could help, and they are within the party. Why not fall on them? If there is anything that President Akufo-Addo was at fault for, it will be his penchant for holding on to loyalty. Once you are loyal to President Akufo-Addo, you might be at fault. You might be doing things that everybody else might see to be wrong, but trust President Akufo-Addo to stand by you and to stick with you. It's not a bad trait. It's not a bad trait on its own. But in some cases, it was overly deployed. At a point, you were wondering whether it's because it's not just about loyalty, but it's also about familial relations, blood relations. Okay, that's my family member, right? Former President Kufuor made his brother the defense minister, right? And then I'm sure the argument that was put forward was that who else will you trust to protect you than your own brother? Especially on the back of you defeating a party that was formed from a military rule. But of course, when President Akufo-Addo came, he decided to send a blood relations to the finance ministry. That brought about the agitations. But of course, I'm sure we'll spend more time to delve into the economy.
Definitely. And if you've been following the conversation, I'm sure you know by now that the EC chairperson, Madam GHOne Mensah, has declared President John Dramani Mahama as president-elect of the Republic of Ghana. She did mention, though, that there were 9 constituencies outstanding because of some issues there. One of those constituencies is Ablekuma North, where the NPP candidate Nana Owusu-Efrie and the NDC's Rabna Obeng are not satisfied with certain happenings. And so the counting, we are told, will resume tomorrow. Let's hear from a member of the NDC team, Sam George.
The remaining 62 will be back tomorrow to complete them. 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. We have 62 outstanding. We are done with 219. We're looking good. We will not put out the figures until we are done. But this is not the time about the figures. When we finish with the remaining 62, we'll finish tomorrow and address the press. But we'll be back to do the remaining 62. We are fighting for every single seat. We are fighting for every single seat. And let us say a big thank you to Madam CID. Madam, thank you so much. Thank you for coming in. Oh no, we are good. Thank you so much. No, but we are going with the EC to lock the sheets in his office till tomorrow. Yes.
We'll continue tomorrow.
Hey, EC. Offer book number.
So you had the NP for Ningo Pram Sam George talking about some 62 polling stations that are left in the Ablekuma North constituency to be counted. There is some disagreements there, but hopefully by tomorrow they will be able to rectify that. But there are 9 constituencies that are having issues. They include Ewutu Senya East in Sawom Adoedri, Akwetia, Suhum, Techiman South again, Dome Kwabenya, Ablekuma North, Ahafwano North, and Damongo.
Mind you, the EC referenced presidential results.
Right.
Some of them have actually been declared. For Ewutu Senya East, for instance, the returning officer, and that's the presiding officer for the constituency, declared. Some of these results have been declared in the constituency for the parliamentary.
Yes.
For the parliamentary.
Yes.
So what GHOne Mensah referenced was for the presidential.
Yes. Right. Okay. So it's now time to get into the numbers and the figures again. And Emmanuel Ejabeng has joined us. Emmanuel and Adam have been doing a fantastic job since we launched our election coverage. And if you've been following, you know how accurate they've been, even with the figures we projected. Exactly the same as what Madam GHOne Mensah eventually declared. So this is your election hub, and we don't say that just for the fun of it. This is your election hub. It's now time for the figures. Emmanuel will take it away. Thank you so much for staying with us here on your election hub. I'm Bernice Abubaidun Lansam. I'm here with my colleagues, head of our political desk, Ibrahim Al-Hassan, and Emmanuel Ejabeng with our research team. And Emmanuel, you've still got some figures to share with us.
Yes, indeed. I remember Friday night when we began the entire process and we were making our projections. Indeed, the results you are seeing today falls within the lower bound, although the turnouts that we projected, we are doing some 10% below that, but which is fine. But I'm glad that we got our lower bound at least correct, where we are hoping around 6.3 million. I don't know what the remainder of the constituencies will look like, but I don't believe it will get to 6.9 million for candidates or now President-elect John Dramani Mahama. You mentioned on Friday, and it's actually true, that anytime we did a voter turnout that was below the previous year's turnout, there has been a change in government. We started from 1996, 2000, it went down, there was a change in government. 2004, there was a peak, 85.1. When it dropped to 61, when Ashanti region did not vote, there was a change in government and the MPP lost. Fast forward to the year 2024, the Ashanti region once again did not vote. We generally had a lower voter turnout in this particular electoral cycle, and we are now seeing a change in government, albeit at an unprecedented level. We are seeing some 1.67 million margin-wise, looking at the number polled by John Dramani Mahama and the number polled by now Vice President and soon to be a statesman, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. So let's just focus on the Ashanti region because it's quite the bank of the MPP, and they seem to have lost their bank. As IB was mentioning earlier, the NDC has made inroads. Now they are having 8 seats in that particular region out of previously had some 4 or 3. 4. Now they have doubled their lead in the region, and it's only because Ashanti region did not vote. But if I told you that was the only case, I would be lying to you. Because if you look at the numbers the NDC polled in the Ashanti region for this particular electoral cycle alone, it's equal to about just about the number the MPP did in Greater Accra region. So we are seeing the NDC poll as much as 697,000 from the Ashanti region. They are doing some 33.10% out of the total of the valid votes that was cast over there. They did this year 2,106,108 valid votes. Now, if you look at the total voter population in the Ashanti region, we are looking at some 3,295,275 people who are expected to vote, but we only saw some 65% turn out to vote. And because less than the usual numbers came in to vote for the MPP, they lost. If you look at the past electoral cycles, and we'll get to that pretty shortly, the MPP has constantly done about 70%. This time round, they did 64.9%. And we'll get into the reasons why we are seeing these numbers. I initially wanted to believe that it was because people were not happy generally with the economy and other things. But we are seeing the NDC equally pull up some numbers over there. And I don't know whether the delegation that was sent to the Ashanti region, the final mop-up of the campaign exercise, there's some magic over there for the NDC. But this is shocking. 8 seats for the NDC in the Ashanti region as well is shocking. Look at the critical issue over here. People said Nana Kwame Bediako will not poll as much as Alan would make in the Ashanti region. But guess what? Alan couldn't match up to Nana Kwame Bediako. So it made me begin to wonder, really, those who said that Alan was a force to reckon with in the Ashanti region, did they lose their touch or they were just speculating? I'll start off with you. I thought Alan was from that region. I felt the region will be loyal to him because I was pretty much young when they gave him the title Alan Cash. And I came to meet Alan Cash. So I was thinking Alan Cash is the way to go. But we are seeing some 8,000 as compared to Nana Kwame Bediako, who just sprang up on the face of politics, doing some 23,432. Is it the seat to the Ashanti region that made them this number, or there's more to this?
Well, so yes, of course, many expected Alan to perform some wonders in Ashanti region, right? And I'm not sure the wonders were just by way of votes that he was going to get, right? It's about what his decision to break away from the NPP will do to the chances of the NPP in the region, right? Yes, I equally expected Alan to at least outperform Cheddar.
Yeah.
Right. I expected him to outperform Cheddar. But Cheddar had a momentum, as I mentioned, and Cheddar had presence. And young people were in Cheddar's corner, right? And so it's not surprising, and of course, for the national average, I expected Cheddar to do better than Alan. But in Ashanti region, at least I expected Alan to do better than Cheddar. And it looks like Ashanti region gave Cheddar his highest number of votes.
Cheddar did around 84,000, and he's making some 23,000 out of that total number in the Ashanti region.
Yes.
For me, that is surprising. I didn't see this coming at all.
Was it simply a case of the people resonating, or his message rather resonating with the people, or it was just a thing of fatigue of the two parties for these persons who decided to give him their vote?
Well, Benis, anybody who voted for Cheddar is fed up with NDC and MPP. And we had many of them who felt the duopoly had been at a place for far too long.
Are you suggesting that his message to the people of Ashanti was not strong enough?
Well, the message
Taking
might have
the
been,
seat.
the message for Ashanti region is the same message he sold nationally, right? But like I said, anybody who decided that I'm buying into Cheddar's message was just fed up with that of the message of the NDC and the message of the NPP, right? But just that he could not gather the needed momentum to get many more people to be fed up with the NDC and MPP. And like I told you, it will be a while for that to happen. There are many people who think that if they vote for any other party rather than NDC or MPP, they are wasting their vote. And that has been the hurdle for the smaller parties to clear and it will take a while for that to happen, to be honest with you. Cheddar put in the resources. Cheddar campaigned as much as the NDC and MPP. He did, if not more. Like I said, I was coming from the central region the last time. I saw his mobile clinic offering services to some indigents in the region. Regardless, look at the votes he got from that region. So he put in the resources. His visibility was there. In fact, at the point he had started his media campaign before the NDC and MPP even joined. But look at his percentage. And of course, the duopoly will be with us for a while.
Interesting, gentlemen. Emmanuel, thank you so much for telling us what Ashanti was. Do you have more figures to share with us?
Yes, speaking of Ashanti region, as I mentioned earlier, if you look at the performance over the past few electoral cycles, the MPP has constantly polled between 70 to 76%. So this time on, they fell below 70 and they did around 64%. Now, if you look at the numbers, which is quite surprising for me then again, apart from the MPP and the NDC that have done so much, the next person that ever came close to making more than 10,000 in the Ashanti region was Christian Kobina Andrews. Yeah. That is of GHOne.
Yes.
But Cheddar broke the cycle. Of all the candidates that have contested beyond the duopoly that we know it, he managed to even closely double the lead of Christian Kobina Andrews in the Ashanti region. For me, that's quite striking. And speaking of the seats that the Ashanti region lost, there's one particular seat that is interesting. If you look at Asante Akim North, this particular seat has not been taken over by anyone for as long as I can remember it. Yeah. It is constantly blue. But this time round, we are seeing a break in that cycle. And so you would see the MPP constantly do between, they started off in 2012 40%, 2016 they did 60%, and they still maintain that in 2020. But this particular electoral cycle, they are gone. There is an independent force over there that took the whole constituency by storm. It brings out the question then is, what are people looking at now to vote? Is it performance in Parliament? Because people always thought that Andy Appiah-Kubi was doing well. If I recall exactly, he was leading the charge for the change in the finance minister, which many Ghanaians had actually called for. And he was actually doing his work as a lawmaker. But this independent candidate comes in and he changes the narrative altogether. Are we losing touch of what parliamentarians are supposed to be doing?
Well, all politics they say is local, to be honest with you. So, and Appiah-Kubi had local issues. He had opened his mouth too wide, if you can describe it that way. He had promised that he was going to do 2 terms and say goodbye to the Asante North seat, paving way for OK Frimpong, who is from the stock of the NPP, to then take over. He decided to renege on this promise that he offered the people of Asante North. And so, OK Frimpong, who is quite resourceful, decided to go independent. Now, what he did, first of all, was to mobilize the base of the NDC in the constituency. So he, first of all, did things that will attract the NDC base there to him. He constructed a mosque, and here was a Christian deciding to sink money into construction of a place of worship for Muslims. And with that action and many other things that he did for the Zongo community, he got their vote. And then he's from Agogo, to be specific, which is the capital of the district. And so he modeled his message on the back of the late Banredu, Kojo Banredu. I'm sure you remember him. He was one of the most celebrated finance ministers under the Kufuor administration. He's late. So therefore, wherever he was going, he had a cloth that had the image of Kojo Banredu. And that got people to believe that that once loved candidate that won to become their MP, that represented them, that was full of humility, as one that has reincarnated into OK Frimpong. Again, Andy nationally had made many enemies, so he might have been short of resources. He had led a crusade to oust Ken Ofori-Atta. You don't do that and get resources to run your campaign, right? And so the local issues for Andy Apiakubi were many, and so he lost. I was surprised that he won the party's primaries, to be honest with you. On the back of Ken Must Go crusade, I felt he was going to lose, just like the Subin MP lost, Eugene Boatie MP lost. But he survived it, but not to survive the general elections.
Well, we will be continuing the analysis as the days go by. And we have more to share with you before we wrap it up quickly here on your election hub. Emmanuel.
But before we even wrap up, to focus solely on the Ashanti region wouldn't be fair to the MPP. Let's look at another Western region case. Because Ivy mentioned critically that Apiakubi's, he opened his mouth too wide or too early, if I got it right, and said a few things. There's this man in Parliament that people have also often had to question some of the things he said. I don't know whether the narrative applies in this particular case for him. But it is the case of Ejapa Mesa, second D. It has constantly been blue. You see increases from 14 to 16 to 17,000. Now we get to 2024 and Ejapa Mesa is down. He is gone and is now doing 11,000. And so you'd see the gap that the NDC had initially. The NDC won this particular contest with some 14,000 votes. That is something they have never come close to achieving apart from 2012. And now they are doing it in this particular electoral cycle. Another striking evidence also is Sikado Ketan, where we have Jogati leaving the floor of that particular seat for Charles Cromwell. And there's so many other names, the last one being Bissu. And Charles Bissu is also losing that particular seat. Is the Western region not happy with the statue? Or there is more to it? Because on the face of the numbers, you would constantly see that sometimes the dynamics will look like, based on past and historical trends, you either could measure up an increase or a decrease and a change in voting pattern. But this is like a bloodbath. I call it woto lashing. And I don't know what is happening in the Western region. Is there something that we are missing beyond the numbers, Ivy?
Well, the region feels neglected, Ejabi. It's an oil resource rich region. We've been exploring oil commercially for the past 10 years. The region feels it's not gotten its fair share of development relative to the oil discovery. And I'm sure that's why even the current administration had to construct another office for GMPC in Takoradi. That obviously is not enough here. So it boils down to the region feeling that it has not gotten its fair share of the national cake, especially on the back of the production of oil in commercial quantities. So it's about development, nothing more, nothing less. If the statute did anything, it served as a catalyst to the anger.
Will the NPP be able to reclaim these seats? I mean, you're doing, if you look at Sikado Ketan, for instance, you're doing constantly 24,000, you move up to 26,000, now you're down to some 17,000. Will the NPP be able to change the narrative going forward?
Emma, that's a very good question. That will be dependent solely on the performance of John Dramani Mahama and his MPs.
That's
Mind
right.
you, the work for John Dramani Mahama has been made a little more difficult. You ask me why. This is why. Usually, you have many more MPs in opposition party. So when you're allocating resources, at least they don't get much. And it's applicable to all political parties, right? You would never give your opponent much more resources than your own people. But now, John Dramani Mahama will have to find resources for as many as 185 constituencies. That's why I say the job has been made much more difficult.
But and that brings to mind the issue of decentralization and why we are still allowing MPs to do things that they aren't meant to do.
Right.
I think that if we allow what we have agreed on as a people to work well, he wouldn't be burdened that much. If we allow MCEs and DCEs to work with what they have been provided with, then he won't have that pressure of having to fund or find ways of funding MPs who belong to his party.
Yes, you're right, Benis. There's something we call the District Assembly's Common Fund, right? And then the MP's Common Fund.
Right.
Those funds are unable to undertake capital-intensive projects. So the central government will have to be deliberate about. So, for instance, there are roads in the Western region that are in terrible shape. The District Assembly cannot undertake such a project. Absolutely. The Regional Coordinating Council cannot undertake such a project. It's incumbent on the central government to make those resources available for the projects to be executed. And that's where the challenge is. You might not necessarily give the money directly to the MP, but you executing the project in the region, in the constituency, we know to the benefit of the MP, because the MP will take advantage. We're talking about Adentan, and we're talking about COSI and the taking project. They are nationally funded projects, central government funded projects. But she passed those projects off as her own, and she was seeking to get the benefit from it by winning the seat. Eventually, it didn't work for her, but she closed the gap. Right? So the argument about allocation of resources is very paramount in this regard. When the president met the people of Ekumfi, we all heard what he said. He said they decided to vote out MPP MPs. And so when he was also allocating resources, he was looking towards where the party had MPs. And the president was just speaking political message.
That was quite a loose statement to make, if you ask me.
But he was speaking political message at the wrong time. That's what the politicians do, but they don't say it. Unfortunately, the president said it.
Interesting. We've still got some more data on the Western region, Emmanuel.
The Western region, look at the presidential race in that particular region. Every now and then, when you go to the Western region, the numbers aren't that bad for the NPP. But this time around, we are seeing something quite different there in the Western region. Look at what we saw in this particular electoral cycle. We are seeing the Western region with a voter population of some 1.2 million, doing 718,000 in this particular electoral cycle. That is some 57.1%. But look at the performance in the past electoral cycles. Over the past 12 years, all they have constantly been doing is about 50%. In this particular electoral cycle, they are doing below even 40%. So they set off at 58, they did 38%, in 2012. They did 41, they did 46. So they are actually constantly been increasing their votes in the Western region from 38 to 41. Now they are back to their roots. Their roots in 2012, where they equally couldn't secure a term in government, they are back to their roots, doing the same 38 they did early on some 12 years ago. Now the question for me is, in 2012, they did this number and they failed. In 2016, they increased to 41 and they made some inroads there and they came to government. If I'm looking at this data and I want to be a prophet by chance, am I to see something like this happening again? Ivy. But if you look at the numbers, 38% may seem quite small, but that's some 275,000 votes to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. If you look at what they polled in the year 2020, it's not a bit too far from the 399,000. But what is likely to happen as we see this term come to some 4 years of running, and then 2028 we are going back to the polls? As you mentioned, the president has a difficult task of providing resources for 180 plus MPs to ensure that they secure a term of governance. It will be difficult, like you rightly said. So for the MPP, do you see a strategy going back to 2012 being implemented again to yield the gains they made in 2016? Because they constantly have seen this trajectory. They go from 38 to 41 to 46, perform below 40% at a start, and then they bounce back with some 3% increase.
Well, I want you to take notice of the voter turnout in the Western region. I think we've not been fair to the Ashanti region. Ashanti region makes 65%. And hell is breaking loose, but then others are doing less. Others who had been voting NPP again are doing less, and we are okay.
No, I mean, Ivy, it's because the NPP itself considers the Ashanti region as its bank.
We get that, but the national average, per what the EC told us, is 60.1 or so percent.
60.9%.
60.9%. So Ashanti region is actually doing much more than the national average. But then the region is taking the flag just because it is the stronghold of the NPP. That's my point. My point is that nationally, there was apathy, general apathy. But we should not be singling out the Ashanti region. It's just because the NPP had hope that Ashanti region was going to show up and show up big. That's why we're having this conversation about singling out the Ashanti region, when in actual fact, they did much better than the national average. Now, back to your question. Yes, the NDC and the resources and the fact that what the NPP needs to do in the Western region. See, the NPP will have to find out the direction. And the direction here, I mean leadership. the MPP might have to call for an early Congress and determine who its leader should be. In fact, if the MPP wants to make inroads come 2028, they should be electing their flag bearer 2 years ahead of time, right? And the people will then know as to whether there is going to be continuity, whether Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia will still lead the party or there will be a change. Because regardless of how it goes, if the MPP doesn't choose its flag bearer early enough, the divisions that choice will bring will drive the party further down the hill. And so I'm very sure that after swearing in come January 7, the party will have no chance to even be scrutinizing at the John Dramani Mahama administration, but to zoom straight into work, into mending the cracks within its own fold.
But to be fair to the other regions, Ashanti region did above the national average. But if you look at 65% of 3 million plus, you're seeking some 2 million people doing the work. That's some 1 million short, and that's quite a huge number.
I get you. 1 million people decide not to vote. Yes, I get that. In 2020, more than 2 million, almost 3 million people nationally equally decided not to vote, even though the voters register was compiled in the same 2020. Even for special voting, just 83% of them showed up, even though we all submitted our names to the EC that we wanted to vote in a special dispensation. So I get that. There was general apathy. The Ashanti region didn't show up. Yes, I get that. But the point I'm making is that it's spreads across.
Right, IB and Emmanuel. Well, we'll bring you more analysis here on your election hub in the coming days. Interesting days ahead. We're waiting for some of the results from some constituencies. We know that some of them are outstanding. And here I'm not referring to presidential because, as we know, it won't make any difference, but maybe it may help in the analysis and the conversations. We're looking forward to see what is happening in the outstanding constituencies where no person has been declared winner for the parliamentary elections. You stay with us here on your election hub, but just watch this shortly. We'll be back to discuss it.
I'd like us to end the conversation with your policies for the youth, but briefly, did you really say that we should cut off your head if the NDC wins power? Did you say that?
Not win.
Did you say that?
They will not win.
Did you say that?
Well, maybe you can give me a code, then I'll remember where
yes, I... Yes, did you say that?
So you've not mentioned that anywhere?
Oh, I have had cause to beat my chest and say that we are going to win these elections at all costs.
And if you don't win, we should cut off your head.
Yes.
Do you so stand by it?
Oh, yes.
They are listening.
Yes.
Including the one that you are quoted as saying that you will not sacrifice power on the altar of peace.
Yes.
And what do you mean by that statement?
So if you want to understand it, play the whole speech, then you understand.
Okay.
I said, and it was in response to the NDC. They went to Tamale to do a program, and my colleague, national youth organizer, said they will not be victims of peace.
Okay.
Yes, they will not be victims of peace. So the following week, when we also had the program, I said, Abakade.
It was a chance to clap back.
Then I also told them that we will not sacrifice the elections on the same altar of peace. Because if you will not be victims, why should I sacrifice?
Okay.
Simple. And I till date, look, till I go into my grave, I take it. I'll take it to my grave. I stand by it.
You are still standing by the fact that we should cut off your head if the NDC.
They will not win. The Egyptians should
it's like Tutua is interested in cutting off your head.
I'd like us to end the conversation with your policies for the youth, but briefly, did you really say that we should cut off your head if the NDC wins power? Did you
they
say
will
that?
Not win.
Did you say that?
They will not win.
Did you say that?
Well, maybe you can give me a code, then I'll remember where
yes, I... Yes, did you say that?
So you've not mentioned that anywhere?
Oh, I have had cause to beat my chest and say that we are going to win these elections at all costs.
And if you don't win, we should cut off your head.
Yes.
Do you so stand by it?
Oh, yes.
They are listening.
Yes.
Including the one that you are quoted as saying that you will not sacrifice power on the altar of peace.
Yes.
And what do you mean by that statement?
So if you want to understand it, play the whole speech, then you understand.
Okay.
I said, and it was in response to the NDC.
they went to Tamale to do a program, and my colleague, national youth organizer, said they will not be victims of peace.
Okay.
Yes, they will not be victims of peace. So the following week, when we also had the program, I said, Abakade.
It was a chance to clap back.
Then I also told them that we will not sacrifice the elections on the same altar of peace. Because if you will not be victims, why should I sacrifice?
Okay.
Simple. And I till date, look, till I go into my grave, I take it. I'll take it to my grave. I stand by it.
You are still standing by the fact that we should cut off your head if the NDC.
They will not win. The Egyptians should.
It's like Tutua is interested in cutting off your head.
It's interesting sometimes how politicians get, guys. It's as though they have the power to decide on behalf of the people. I'm not sure any politician can be so emphatic, and we've heard it not only from Salam, who is the youth organizer of the NPP. We've heard it from the Ashanti regional chairman himself, Chairman Buntumi. They were so emphatic. Anyway, that's just by the way. This is just a reminder to politicians that you don't have absolute power over everything.
Definitely, and of course, one of them is Pope, who's watching us from Kede. He actually contested for the seat on the ticket of the NPP during the NPP's internal election, and he lost. He thinks he knows why the party lost. And let me just read what he sent. It's a short one. Causes of NPP's humiliating defeat. 1. Delegate system in selecting leadership. Wrong approach to selecting leadership. Monetization during primaries. And starving party people at the grassroots. And failure to empower party people. So the diagnosis has started.
All right, definitely. And we'll be bringing you more analysis here on your election hub and talking about politicians and what they do. By now, if you're a politician, you should know that you can't get away with anything that you do, including plagiarizing a speech.
My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. I am so proud of the race we ran and the way we ran it. I get it. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up.
And on that note, we say a very good night to you. Emmanuel, you can't help it, can you? All right, guys.
I wanted to say what he said, Farouk wrote in Hausa, but no problem.
We'll come back again. But thank you so much for joining us here on your election hub. It's been a pleasure serving you. We are back again tomorrow morning, but definitely we are bringing you throwbacks, recaps of everything throughout the night. It's a pleasure once again having you. Good night.